What's up guys, hope everyone is doing well. In this video I'm going to be going over some updates for Bitcoin, but to go ahead and get it started here. First chart, the 6-hour chart. Briefly talked about this not too long ago in a community post. Given that Bitcoin recently is now pushing back towards 65 and even a tad bit above at 65,000 at this point, sitting now at highest at around basically right at approximately 68k, which is good to be seeing. If we look down here at the RSI, there's this downtrend that goes all the way back to May 20th of this year. So the RSI was peeking its head just ever so slightly above it back here when Bitcoin was hitting around 64 to 66.5 towards the end of last month, showing the first potential signs, as I was saying then, especially breaking back above this median of this descending broadening channel that Bitcoin has been in for around 8 months at this point. But as I was saying, we are now seeing the RSI pop back up above here. We're seeing, as I mentioned earlier, we're seeing these higher highs and higher lows. You can see here with this high set here, there's a high here higher, and now we are on our third high that is set higher here. After this, it's going to be very important for Bitcoin to push into 70 and above 70k, as I've been saying recently. If we look here at this daily chart, this more symmetrical descending downtrend, this channel that Bitcoin's been in for, like I said, around 8 months at this point. Looking here at the normal candlesticks, you can see Bitcoin ever so slightly went above the uppermost resistance here. And now again, Bitcoin's even further printing some white volume vector candles as well, which could signal, for example, maybe Bitcoin will come down and test one more time and then find support and continue to move higher here, or perhaps it will continue even lower, because that always is possible at the end of the day, although I definitely do not lean towards that. I think Bitcoin is beginning its final impulse of this current bull market. And as I was saying for previously on the 6-hour chart, that 70k is very important for this region right here, as Bitcoin's getting closer to it, breaking the resistance of this channel in the 6-hour. If you look here at the daily, moving into this daily chart, it's going to be very important for Bitcoin to get above this pink trend resistance here, horizontal resistance around 68.1. We have a purple one here at around 71,000, and then here the final one, turquoise, at around 72.2k. If we look down here at the RSI, we can see that this yellow range denotes a horizontal zone going all the way back to the beginning of the sideways action around halfway into March of this year. The RSI has been held below this for this entire time period. The Bitcoin has been, ever so slightly having this very just minor deviation, orientation towards the downside, mostly going sideways, but like I was saying, with that slight downwards bias. Going to be very important to see the RSI continue higher above this. I mean, if the RSI can push above around basically 67 to 68 here on this daily chart, as Bitcoin, we're seeing Bitcoin go above the 68,000, heading towards 71,000, 72, 73,000, and showing strength. And, especially if Bitcoin just blows out of the water over the next, let's say over the next few days, just within the next, around 15 days left of October, very likely could see Bitcoin exploding here soon and breaking each of these 3 targets I've mentioned along with the horizontal range down here for the RSI. Looking here at the 4-day chart I went over in a past video, still holding strong with this downtrend resistance. You can see here on the RSI, Bitcoin broke above it, came down and is even approximately retested it. Didn't come all the way down and touch it, but it's still nonetheless broke above, came down. Seems right now to be finding a bounce. It's just really the big question here is whether or not Bitcoin is going to continue higher, if it's going to break those 3 price targets that I mentioned in the prior chart. We move in here to this 4-day chart. Very important to see this purple resistance right here going all the way back to beginning of June of this year. The 4-day candle of around September 25th closed just a tad bit above this, but we're seeing this further confirmed here as the current candle, 4-day candles, far more up above this than it is. 2 days, 18 hours left, likely I think going to close above this, and the next resistance here on this 4-day chart is going to be, again, 70k. Not only structurally speaking here for this sideways, slightly downside range Bitcoin's been in for about 8 months. That itself pointing to 70K, but also 70K being just a whole psychological number important to look out for. In general, if we look down here at the RSI, I mentioned how we saw these turquoise dots down here. I was mentioning on daily time frames and 4-day time frames with respect to this indicator, but we saw this final turquoise dot printed here as Bitcoin set this kind of triple bottom beginning towards the end of June. Right here, these three bottoms on various different charts that I've shown. One of them I believe I'm going over in this video. Different time frames, you'll see a bullish, triple bullish divergence here forming, or a double depending on how you look at it. So far we're seeing this bullish cross, as I pointed out in the last video. The RSI did come down and test the median here of the Bollinger Bands, and so far seeing a bounce similar to the RSI on the prior chart. Now, if we can see the RSI break above the Bollinger Bands here, that will just further confirm what this chart is saying on the 4-day, this daily, all the way down to the 6-hour that I've gone over in this video, acting as a nice multi-level confirmation in terms of an analytical sense, going from the lower time frames, scaling up here towards the higher time frames with them all really, at least through the lens that I look at things. Obviously, I can be wrong. I do clearly have a bullish bias in this video and have for many videos that I posted within the last year or so, but nonetheless, everything really trying to speak as objectively as possible seems to be pointing to Bitcoin heading into its final impulse for this bull market. We move in here to this weekly chart. Now this is very big. Looking here at the current weekly candle, we point out, or just pay attention to this purple descending resistance. This weekly candle is currently just ever so slightly above this. There's 4 days, 18 hours left in this current weekly candle. I think it's more likely than not going to close above it. And if it does close above it, this is going to be the first real massive, especially because this is on the weekly, and this is the descending resistance for this entire approximately 8-month period that Bitcoin's been trending sideways, slightly toward with a downwards orientation. This right here could be seen, assuming that it continues to go higher once this weekly candle closes above this resistance, signaling something very similar to what we saw back in April leading into September, October 2023, just as we are here a year later, something I've been pointing out in recent videos, where we saw this candle. There was more of a horizontal resistance here for this last sideways consolidation in this bull market. And as soon as the weekly candle closed above this, Bitcoin from top to bottom went up 147%. Just to say, if Bitcoin does something similar to that this time around, then 140 would put it up to around 155%, not 155%, 155,000 approximately. Those of you familiar with my content, I think Bitcoin can very reasonably go quite higher than that, even upwards towards around $80,000 higher than that, pushing around 230K approximately, just somewhere around 200,000, give or take 30,000, as I have been saying recently. This is one of the charts on the weekly where we can see, as I mentioned earlier, where we see this descending. You can look at this shape here as like an M pattern, where we're seeing this double bottom set, which the double bottom would be the portions of each of these bottom of the M's. Whereas if we look down here at the RSI, it's ascending, price is descending for each of these, and indicating a bullish divergence, which again seems to be the case here, assuming Bitcoin can get this weekly close above this resistance and then ultimately can get above the $70K to $74,000 range over the next few weeks, over the next month to two, just generally within the last few months that we have of this current year leading into 2025. Moving into this weekly chart here, again similar to the 4-day chart that I went over, we can still see the resistance here each of these times within the bull market ever since around going back to November 2022, around 16,000. Seeing a very similar situation so far. As I mentioned, the moving averages here, so the 100 SMA crossing above the 200 SMA, so the orange line going above the black line. I was pointing this out, and I was saying that I personally, this is going to be quite a bullish sign, similar to how the 50 SMA going below the 200 SMA and then crossing back above it was bullish. These SMAs are clearly going to have a relationship, whereas in the context of Bitcoin here, we can see that the white going below the black, 50 below 200 is bullish, and then once it crosses back above is bullish, and then this, by the time, let's see, it was actually from the crossing below 50 going below the 200 to when the orange went below the black, it was only 252 days apart, whereas if we do actually look here at the cross above of the two, or the white SMA above the black, we can see another around 252 days, almost right down to the exact dot. So we're seeing some sort of similarity there within the time between each of these crosses, whether it's below or above. Lastly, if we look down here at this MACD, as I pointed out in one of the last videos, we were seeing this kind of funneling up this triangle convergent pattern here for the RSI. So far, not the RSI, the MACD is sitting right on the resistance. If this can continue to bounce and price continues to bounce, then I think this is shaping up for, as I've already been saying, quite a bullish move up towards the upside here for Bitcoin. If you look at the RVI, there was this support going all the way back to November of last year. It's been each of these three major points in the bull market so far for lows right here, here, and here. And it's also, again, just to point this out, similar time frame between each of these as well. We're looking at just approximately 40, let's just say approximately 40 to 45 bars. And from here to here, we're also seeing somewhere around a little bit more broad, somewhere around 40 to 50 bars, all just within a general ballpark of time elapsed in between, regardless of the minute differences. And the RVI is currently sitting right along the median here. It's going to be very important, similar to how, as you can see right here, once it solidified movement above the median, then broke the Bollinger Bands, is when the second impulse here for Bitcoin began. Likely seeing something, I think, very similar right here again, where we're going to see this third and final impulse of this current bull market. If you look here at this weekly chart, mainly the RSI here is showing something I think insanely interesting, even more strong than, well, it's actually something very similar. This is basically the same thing, just with a different indicator. This being the RVI down here, as I mentioned, and I believe it was, I'm not sure if there was something else, I don't think so, but so the RVI compared to this being the RSI for this weekly chart, where we can see going all the way back to December 2022, Bitcoin's hitting 16K, it's bottoming out. We are seeing bullish divergences form with respect to certain indicators and the price. Going all the way back to this point, we can then see, fast forwarding to September 2023, found another bounce point. Fast forwarding to September of this year, 2024, we're finding another bounce point, I believe. And you can see each of these times we're seeing this trend line on the RSI being met very, very precisely. And even if we zoom in here, if I draw a resistance line here, not sure if it's quite above it, just kind of eyeing it right here, but adding this line here, we can see that once the RSI can get above this black resistance, this will also act as further confirmation of Bitcoin beginning some sort of impulse. It's going to have quite a lot of volatility and strength behind it. Here for this chart right here, lastly, the 2-week chart is one of, in terms of, let's see, going back to this chart here, this is very big, as I mentioned, and then I would say this chart right here, this one's also very big. Really, all three of these charts that I just mentioned out here, I mentioned just now, being very big. This being one of them. On the highest time frame I'm going over in this video, where we can see the resistance here almost horizontal, very slight downwards orientation right here. And the 2-week candle, current one, is just right below it. It's even, zooming in closely, you can see the wick is even a little bit above it, resistance here at this point. There's also 4 days, similar to the weekly chart, 4 days, 18 hours left before we see this candle close. If over the next 4 days, roughly, this 2-week candle, Bitcoin continues to go up here. If this 2-week candle can close above this, it's going to happen. We'll also see this weekly candle close, and this is going to be double confirmation, higher time frames, where we're going to see this confirmed. Even if we look down here at the RSI resistance for this 2-week has already been broken recently as well. If it can get above this median here, sitting at around 61 for the RSI value, seeing it happen, seeing the price close above and the RSI go above as well, along with everything else that I've mentioned, leading up from these lower time frames here to the higher time frame, the highest being the 2-weekly, all seeing very similar situations where we're seeing down to the lowest time frames, we're seeing the RSI break its resistances. We're seeing price further and further breaking further and further resistances towards the upside. And now we are just, as I was saying, going back to, let's look here at this daily chart, we're just waiting for these 3 regions here, the turquoise, purple, and the pink. Bitcoin can first milestone just get above around 68K, and then after that get above around 71K, then lastly leading up to 72K. Then this will really all act as the final nail in the coffin for Bitcoin to begin what I believe, and I've been saying, is the third impulse for Bitcoin within this current bull market. But that was all that I wanted to go over in this video. So as always, hopefully you enjoyed. None of this is meant to be financial advice, educational. If anything, is really my purpose for these videos. But all that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Ooh, I'm regretting now.